Okay. Hello, welcome on our next webinar. Today, for the second time, we have a special guest. This time we have Radek Maziarka. And for the people from Poland, then probably I don't have to introduce Radek, but just in case. And for the people outside of Poland, Radek is in our community one of the most well-known people, and for even storming, product thinking, and in general, how to make transformation between and connection between business and architecture. So I'm super happy that he agreed to join us and show us and pass his knowledge about the modularization with event storming process level. So today I won't be speaking too much, finally. So I'm
You can, Oscar. Like, it's not a problem. Like, you can ask the questions on, or even like develop the ideas that I will be spreading here. So, like, you are more than welcome, and as you as well, if you like to, any joiner that wants to is free to speak, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I will try to be today more in the listening or participating mode. So I'm giving you the voice, and yeah. Thanks, Radek. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So hello everybody. Welcome to this semi-workshop, so like the interactive workshop called modularization with event storming process level. I'd like to show you what are the different modularization techniques, modularization heuristics that you can use to split your solution into some smaller, more cohesive parts without adding too much coupling into your system. But first, a few words about me. My name is Radek Maziarka. I work as a solution architect and engineering manager, currently mostly as a consultant and a trainer for Polish product companies and software houses. I specialize in domain-driven design and product thinking techniques to deliver long-lasting solutions. And I originate from .NET community, so Azure cloud is my first cloud of choice. I try to spread the knowledge about the DDD, about product thinking, about engineering practices in social media and on my blog. You can follow me if you want on Twitter with the Radek Maziarka handle, and on Instagram and LinkedIn, when I also try to share this information. And this workshop is available online on the link on Miro. I just passed it to the meeting chat. I hope that this link will be available for the newcomers. I hope so, but if not, we'll have newcomers. I will try to share it once again. I don't know, like, Oscar, do you have an answer for that question? Is it available for the newcomers?
No, I think that when people will join, then they won't see that, but just in case, I will be copy and pasting that from time to time.
Okay, so great. So like you can help me in that matter. Yeah. So like this table, this Miro is available online. It will be available after the presentation, and if you want, you can ask questions both on chat, but also you can ask questions or add some comment. Just putting some cards on the board. I'll try to react to them, to answer to them in the meantime after like covering some part of the show here. So what today? Yeah, and you can also add this emoticons or something like that. Like there are so many new tools, so many new extensions to the Miro that I'm hardly following them. So, but you can use them, of course. So what's the plan for today? I will introduce you to the domain because we'll use event storming on a particular domain. So I'll try to say a few words about this domain. Then I will introduce you briefly to the event storming. It won't be a full deep dive into this technique, but just showcase how to use it. And during this explanation, during this show, I will explain different modularization heuristics. And then we will go into discussion about modules and the bounded context. And then at the end, I will describe how to handle communications between different modules, with different about different communication between different bounded contexts regarding business logic and front-end data, because usually we have coupling on the different levels, not only about like the about some very consistent rules, but sometimes we couple the modules also. For example, because we want to get some data from the different module, and we couple these modules very much. Okay, so without further ado, let's go to our business domain. The area that I'm currently exploiting very much, exploring this domain right now is connected to renting bikes. So let's assume that we are creating a system to be able to allow our clients to rent a bike from our platform in different cities. And this is the visualization, the high-level visualization of this of the main process, and it originates from domain storytelling technique. So in this bike rental system, we would have two main processes. First, our client will reserve a bike in a rental system. So they will be able to reserve a particular bike to be able to get it when they come to the actual station. So they will be able to get a bike. They will be able to reserve it, not to get this unhappy some kind of sad situation when you get to the station, there is no bike waiting for you. So we want to avoid it. Then client can rent this bike based from station, not from station, like I forgotten to translate. So they can rent the bike from station based on the reservation. So the bike is waiting for them. And then they can return this bike to the another station. So they rent from one place and they return it in another place. And of course, like behind the surface, there is paying, there is applying fees, etc. But from the high level, we have this kind of processes here. And like how is our client like using our platform? They can see themselves on a map, and they see different stations, or sometimes the bikes are placed not in the station, but just freestanding bikes around them, and they can see what kind of bikes they have around. So, like the typical approach of modularization in this kind of systems would be to modularize the system by different processes. So we discuss the processes, and then we split it into different, and we split the system into different parts. And we can visualize it somehow as some kind of like the bigger arrows, some smaller arrows around. Yeah, so the process comes from one end, from one point to another, passing more and more data. Yeah? And based on that, and by visualizing it like that, it comes very easy to try to modularize the system. Like, okay, let's have the modularization somewhere like here, somewhere like here. So we'll have like three different modules, like first module, second module, third module somewhere here. And it's a very easy, very convincing technique, like to be able to split it that way, because even we as an industry, as a people working in the different organizations, companies, we split the responsibilities in that way. We split it as a department working at the beginning of the process, then some middlemen, then people like at the end of the process. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that in the actual computer systems. And why is that? Because to be able to fulfill the different business logic inside of the processes, to be able to cover some cases, we need to get the data from the different part, from the different processes. So to be able to answer some questions, we get information from that process, but also from that process. Or sometimes, like even inside of the single process, we have the different parts of this process. There is focus on the different things. So these different things like needs different types of information, have different types of validations. At the end, like splitting the systems like that ends up with the massive big ball of mud where we don't understand our boundaries. Everything is coupled with everything, and unfortunately, we make a decision about rewriting the system yet once again, and we rewrite it, and we end up with the same situation after 5 years. So we write it again. You get it. You've been potentially in the situations even more than once. Unfortunately, I've been. So what we can do? What we can do about it? How we can handle this modularization to use different modularization heuristic, not only to split the system by the processes. So to be able to do it, we'll use event storing process level. So what do we want to achieve during this event storing process level? So we want to transfer the business process to a technical solution. So we want to like the technical part of the solution based on the business process, and then split this process into separate modules. In the DDD community, they're called bounded content, but we can stick right now to the name module. And we'll use we can use event storing process level. For example, when you construct a new system, a new part of system, but also when we want to determine how to change the current system. So it's not only a technique that we'll use when the system is new, when we start a new greenfield project, but also when we want to make a change in the brownfield. Probably this is the kind of name, or this kind of like legacy system. So that's also the way to adapt an existing system to a new needs. And for those who don't know the notation, I will introduce it very briefly about the notation about event storming, and not using all the notation because it's not needed for the case of this workshop. So the notation of much simplified looks like that. We have an event. It's written in past. And it's about some change state of the system. So the state of the system before that event was different than after this event. So we want to cover important changes in our system from the business perspective. And very preferably, something is not possible, but usually it is. We want to write this in an impersonal way. So we just write that bike returned to the station, but not who returned it actually. Then we have a different type of notation. It's usually colored in blue. It's a comment, and we write in an imperative way. That we want to change something. So, for example, like we want to return bike to the station, and then it's the result of this command is an event. Sometimes not always, but usually, like when you have one comment, it ends up with the event. And of course, we can have some different information about what kind of constraints, what kind of logic is between this command and event, but we'll omit it for today's workshop. And also for the second part of this talk, we have a reaction. It's also called a policy or rule. Like there are different names in the event storing community about this card. And it's the reaction that runs an action in the response to an event. So we have an event on the left, and this reaction produces a comment. It's a very good way of dividing the processes into smaller parts, adding these reactions because based on that we see when the process splits into some smaller parts, and we'll use it to find out whether we can modularize our system. So maybe any questions right now? Okay. So let's identify our main processes. Let's find out what kind of processes, steps, events we have there. So I've already prepared some of these processes here, and I will be like covering them with you, discussing them with you as we go. So first, we want to we have three different parts as we discussed: reservation, rental, and return. And we'll go into these smaller processes of each those bigger processes areas. So first, we have a present reservation. And we can show it on an event storyboard as such. So first we show the first comment run by user, and we can show different events based on that. So we don't want to, at that point, at the very start, we don't want to show more comments between these events. We just want to show the first main comment and the event that were a result from this comment. So we have a make reservation, somebody, potentially some client, makes a reservation, and we have different types of events there. So we have a reservation was made, that somebody like finished this, like started this reservation. Then bike was removed. Probably this was is missing here. Bike was removed from availability list. So there is some information that okay, bike is available in this area, and when we make a reservation, we want to remove it from the availability list. Not to have the situation like that some other client, some other party is taking the same bike as our first client. So this is the kind of this is a small distinction. Okay, the reservation was made, so like the new something like happened, so something popped up, was created in our system, like somebody written down that okay, we have a reservation for this guy, but also you need to cross out the bike from the availability to be able to cover the situation when somebody else is also reserving this bike. Okay, let's have it. Okay. Then our client can cancel the reservation. So when it happens, when the client cancels a reservation, of course, the reservation is canceled and bike is returned. Bike was returned to the availability list. So the similar situation as we had before. But the trick, the really complication sits in a reservation cancelled by system. Because when the reservation is cancelled by system, we don't only want to return the bike to the availability list, but also we want to somehow punish the client for that fact that they didn't cancel this reservation on time. And we had to do it for them, like, because usually like we want to make this reservation for only 15 minutes. If our clients didn't cancel the reservation, they will be getting all the bytes in the system and nobody will be able to reserve them. So we had to implement this kind of system, and we want to make this reservation, make a selling of the reservation more often in our system. So what do you want to do? In that scenario, when the reservation cancel reservation by system, potentially it's a command that is run by some kind of policy that is waiting for this timer to be finished. But let's not focus on it right now. So we have command like cancel reservation by system, and we have this reservation canceled by systematically. So it's not cancelled by different party, but our system. And because of that, we want to apply a fee for not cancelling reservation. And because of that, we have we want to charge our client. But if we are not able to change our client and this charge failed, we want to make our client as a debtor. So as you can see, looking on this process, the depth of this process is much higher than on this process on the left. So like there is one action in a system, but it contains a lot of different reactions, and usually when we discuss this kind of situations with the business, they see only this first layer, but they don't see the depth of the actions that we have there. So this is also a very good way to discuss this kind of depth, because it's very visual and we can discuss whether these processes are proper or not with our business. So we have in the reservation, like in the reservation area, we have reservation canceling, and reservation canceling by system. Then in the rental, we have two different smaller processes. Rental based on the reservation, because our client can rent based on previously made reservation. So they just so in the situation, they run a comment that rents a bike based on the reservation, and the bike is rented, reservation is finished, and the reservation time stopped. So we want to stop the timer that we ran that we started previously. As you can see, there is no information about bike availability here, because we don't have because the bike is already crossed out from the availability list, is stored in this reservation, and then this renting here. But when we make a rental without the reservation, because we want to offer this kind of possibility to our users, we have the bike rented and bike removed from availability list. It's a very easy, very straightforward process. But then we have rental to the station. We have returning to the station and returning outside of the stations. So when we return to the stations, we my God, like why haven't like I've translated all that? Unfortunately, there is no option in Miro to translate all the cards. Like it would be my bike returned.
Yeah, what I notice is that sometimes Miro has some delayed storage. Maybe they have some like PWA. I also had cases in the past where I changed something on Miro, then closed the browser, and after I reopen it, then I noticed that I don't have those changes.
Yeah, it can be the case. I think that it just my overlook, but yeah, there are the cases like that when you change a lot of things and then it turns out that it only covers a half of it. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to it. So when we return the bike to the station, then we want to apply a fee for a rental, and then we want to charge a client. And if it's not this client is not charged, we want to mark this client as a debtor. So we have some kind of like similarity here, but we have different fees and different event that starts it. When we returning it outside of the station, we want to apply different types of fee, because we also want to have additional fee for returning it outside of the station. So we have this, once again, you have the different types of fees and calculating how it goes. And as you can see here, also in this scenario, also with the return, we have this depth of the process. So we have the first level reaction, second level reaction, third level reaction, fourth level reactions on the different depth of our process, and only by not only but because of visualization of this process, we can discuss the depth and our solution and show our solution to it. Without it, it would be very easy to cover it as the first part and maybe on the second module, and then we'll have a very and we have a lot of problems in writing the same code multiple times and combining the different parts of this, coupling the different parts of our solution to fulfill different types of business processes. So as you can see here, and as you can see here, you have here like the different process, different depths of the process. And I have open question to you. What comes to your mind when you see these processes? Like what's kind of thing that you see on this process? What are your thoughts about it?
I think that, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Oscar. So I think one of the first important things here on this board is that several processes are being repeated. So for example, your bike was returned to the availability list in reservation canceling, bike returned to the availability list in reservation canceling by system. So maybe we could search and look for the events which are occurring in different processes.
Yes, yes. So we can find out whether like this process, whether these events from the different processes here are covering the same like parts of the system, but from a different angle. So maybe about some data, about the different business logic that is connected to it, to somehow split these processes even deeper. What's also another thought that we could have here?
I think that we also have a few processes that kind of are different from the business perspective, but mechanics are similar. Like, for example, returning and charges, even though they are quite, I mean, they are different. Like, we will make different actions whether each client is charged because they just return the bicycle to the station, or whether it was because it's some kind of delayed or some forgot to put it on time. But so the business logic is slightly different and the intention is different, but mechanics are quite similar.
Yeah, so at some point, the mechanics starts to look similar in that case, or like for a different kind of processes that we could have here. For example, like these processes could have a similar steps, or there would be like used in a different order, but they would be the same events there. So it's this kind of reflections are possible because we have a great visualization of our process, that we could see that you have some repetition here, that this process are kind of similar, even though that we have different intentions there, like with the reservation canceling by system and with returning outside the station, then it looks some kind of similar, and maybe we'll be able to modularize it. So first, the first heuristic that we can use it to start our modularization is about the main questions. So what we can come up right now is ask what are the main questions that we can ask in our system to check what kind of events are helping us with answering these questions. So what kind of like the main sources of truth that we want to ask our questions about are here. And it's an open question to you once again. What kind of questions, main questions we could ask about the system? When you have these processes, what we can ask our system about?
Is this bike available?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, is that bike available? It is not available, and it's available. It's like the very important information for our user. Yeah, another one maybe.
Did I pay everything that I should for my bike rental?
Yes, this is another great question about the cost of the operation, and then about whether you paid or not paid it fully, whether you are a debtor or not a debtor. And asking this, finding out these questions is really important in modularization, because we want to avoid the situation where answering these questions, where answering to a single question, you need to get information from two different modules. So we want to avoid the situation when answering this single question we need to ask two different modules. So this is the proposition of the main questions here, that, for example, how many bikes are there to rent? Yes, so about the availability that we have. What kind of reservation rental does the client have? It's kind of different question, because the bikes are the like kind of physical things, and the reservation rental is only some information about the client. So this is more this is more availability related. This is more client related. We have these questions. We have this question that are asked: how has the customer paid? How much debt does he have? And we can ask another question: what is the customer's total cost of operation? And because they had these reservations, returns, and what's the total cost about it? And when we have these questions defined, there is this interesting trick that you can use on the event storming board, that you can mark the events on the board with the copy of the card, to check, to spot, to mark what kind of events are needed to answer this question. And for example, when you have the question, how many bikes are there to rent, it's probably connected to the bike availability question. And probably I will need to make this smaller as well. Okay. But reservation was made, it's probably connected to this question about the reservation rentals, about the client's information. And this reservation timer started is connected to just some technical part of our solution. Then we have reservation canceling, so also the same situation. There we have information about the availability, about the client's processes. But then there is an interesting thing on the bottom, that we will use 4 different questions to mark these events here, because reservation was canceled automatically is connected to the client. Bike return to availability is connected to the availability. Then calculating of the fees is connected to the question of total customer cost of operation, and then paying and being a debtor is connected to the and charging client and marking client debt is connected to the last question. And because of that, because of this simple trick, we can see like almost immediately that we have a process that is connected to different types of questions in our system. That there is a single business process, but from a system perspective, this process creates events that are connected to the different questions about our main questions. And we could do the similar situations on the right about the rentals. The situation with the rental is very easy, because we'll have the same situation with the reservation canceling, and this rental and rental outside the station is similar to canceling reservation canceling by the system, that will have that bike is returned to the availability list twice outside of these processes, and then there is bike return to the station, bike return outside of the station, fee applying, and charging a client. So it's the first step that we can do about modularization, about thinking about the modularization, to spot what kind of events are connected to the different main questions that we want to have, have an answer inside of the single module. And then when we'll actually think about the modularization, we'll check whether we'll not have a situation when 2 different modules answers a single question. Is it clear? Do you have any questions regarding to that?
No, but I can say that I already learned a new thing. That's super simple and super cool technique.
Yeah, like it's super easy. I found it during some talk of Alberto Brandolini or maybe Sławek's bootcamp, and like it just opened my mind that like it's a very easy thing, but it's also very powerful, because you don't want to have a situation when you have 2 different modules that answers question about availability. Yeah, because it would be super difficult to maintain this kind of system. So in the best case, we should have all the events, all the events from the single question inside the single module.
Yeah, yeah. I really like it.
So
Okay.
I have two questions.
Yeah.
This is really great. Thank you so much for what you're showing. Do you have a two-phase commit problem when you have the bikes that are reserved, like in some, I'm imagining some repository or a table space somewhere, where you go to actually, set some kind of like transaction state for this to make sure that it actually is something that you can actually reserve. And then once you know that you can, then you're pulling it off versus possibly having two events or two threads that are actually competing for that same thing because it thinks that both are they both think that the same line item that they're looking for to reserve is available.
Yeah, like it's great that you asked this question because the answer to this question is on the next part of the presentation. For
Okay.
that part, for that like step in my thought of my process of modularization, I assume for that time kernel that all of this happens atomically in a single transaction, and another part of our modularization is thinking about what needs to happen transactionally and what should happen like outside of the transaction. So right now we only want to do a single to tackle a single problem in a single time, because like thinking about this kind of transactional way of working, it's a very problematic because it's a very problematic when you also think about this main question, because it's too much to eat, like this the phrase, like too much to grab in a single time. So like this is the first part, and then my next question here, like what needs to happen immediately, what needs to happen transactionally, and this is another question that we can ask to check what can or can't be separated, or what kinds of different processes we need to include, what kind of different process we want to have this kind of separation, a separation of domains, but also be able to be sure that our clients reserve the bike.
This is, I want to ask one more question before we jump off here, because this frame is exactly the second question. So if you leave it right there, you see client charged is in two places. And of course, client charge failed. Are you implying that there's always going to be a command that's a result of the event for a fee applied for rental and returning outside station? It's going to then generate a command to like a Stripe service or some isolated service that's going to say charge customer, and it's going to have a claim check for that event? Or are you going to have something handling inside of that event handler for that event that just knows it's going to go and actually try to do something directly against Stripe? Are you imagining having a separate like extra receipt of a command in there?
I think that like for that time of being like in this process, I don't include it because it's like too much information at once.
Right. Understood.
Like to cover this kind of problem that we have. You will see on the right that I will add these comments to show where is the reaction that we can decide whether we want to run this comment or not. And at this point of the workshop, I don't want to include it because it's like too much information that would not give us enough insights,
Right.
what maybe from the another angle it would overload us with the information, but
Absolutely.
not give us enough insights.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we can think about this. What needs to happen immediately, and like this, it's an important thing that was noticed by Houston, that when we will split this part, maybe not that part, but maybe that part, when we will split this part and we will have the reservation was made, but not the bike was removed from the availability list, we'll need to have some kind of like two steps process to be able to confirm that the bike is removed. So this kind of in this kind of situation, splitting these events into two different like modules would be kind of like difficult. Of course, sometimes it's needed, but at this problem, maybe we don't have enough like architectural drivers or business needs to split this into different parts. So it could maybe in our scenario it can happen immediately, like at once, like transactionally. But looking on the different processes here, maybe applying fees won't need to be done immediately just after the in the same database transaction and as the reservation that is cancelled, because like it's not needed. Like it can happen a few seconds after, and like it's be okay for the business. And the same applies to the clients, charging the clients. Like usually, like you want to contact some external system, and there will be some repetition, some failover to the different payment provider, etc. So it's really hard to make this immediately transactional as the different parts on the left. So it can also be divided into some smaller parts. And of course, like answering to this question is very contextual. So it depends on the rules, the driver that acts in your system. But in our case, we discussed that it will be more difficult to divide these events into different modules, into different parts to make it not transactional. But then at some point we will be able, we could like separate it, but right now we can have it in the single transaction. For the rest, we could like avoid it and we could do it separately. So we can introduce the reaction and additional comment to show the situation. Yeah, and once again, like another. Yeah. So then I'll show only a part of this event because they are not all needed here. So we could have the parts that are like transactional. So we have reservation canceled systematically, and we have two events there, or the return to the station, and then two events created based on that. Then it's the very like interesting thing in the Miro that you can link cards between each other. So you can copy a link from here. You can paste it here, and then when you can have this kind of connection between cards in the board without actually like having like things like that, because it would make your board more burden. So you can just have, okay, where is this card, where this card originates from that card. Probably I linked the wrong one. So it's a good option to link the different parts of our board together without actually adding arrows. And then we can think about the reactions. So when the reservation was canceled systematically, we have a reaction, and if we have canceled a reservation systematically, then apply a system of cancellation fee, and this fee was applied. The similar situation we have here when the bike returned to the station. If the bike returned to the station, we apply a rental fee, and the rental fee is applied. So we have a separation of the processes. We have separation of the process. We have a main process, and then process about the reaction to the main events. And then on the right, we have the same. We have a process about charging. So when the rental fee is applied, when the system cancellation is applied, then we charge client. And of course, we could like dive deeper into this area here. What kind of different policies are there? But at that very level, we don't need to if it doesn't like improve our visibility about connections to the different about the modularization. So we have events from this command are like client was charged but wasn't charged, like charge failed. And only to this only to the second event, another process will be run. So if the client charge failed, then mark client as a debtor, and you have another event there. So this is the first part where we could think about the modularization. So what needs to happen like transactionally, like immediately, and what can be done in some different part of the application, not transaction. And because of that, it would be much easier for us to spot the modules that we could have here. So the question that I have to you, what kind of modules could we have here, as you can see on that board?
I was just wondering if there's a process for reversing a charge if someone's made a debtor and it gets corrected or something.
Yeah, there could be a process about it. So potentially we could have an information that that fee was applied incorrectly, and then there would be a similar process if fee was applied incorrectly. What's the name for returning like
chargeback?
Oh yeah, maybe me chargeback, yeah.
Yeah, chargeback or credit. Yeah.
Client, and maybe. Mm-hmm. So based on the situation, we'll see that, of course, like I omitted this small cards here, but we will see that these processes, this part on the from the purple card, is connected mostly to the single questions here. That will be able to spot the parts of the processes that are connected to the single question, to the single sort of truth in our system. And because of that, possibility here that we see it, we will be able to split our module. We'll be able to run the first round of our modularity to think about whether to come up with the possibilities to combine all the parts of the system that have a similar questions answered into a single module. And we could come up with the three modules, like the first iteration of the modules. We have rentals, that it contains three different processes: reservation, rentals, return, and it answers two different questions: how many bikes are there to rent? What kind of reservations, rentals does the client have? It communicates by different events with calculating and applying, and with fees, which is responsible for calculating and applying fees, and answers the question: what is the customer's total cost of operation? And then and it communicates once again with charges, and charge is responsible for charging client and making their debtor. It answers to a question: how has the customer paid? How much debt does they have? And client was made as a debtor as another event that is returned from this module. And of course, like it's the first iteration. So we want to have some answers, but then we want to check whether it's the proper way of dividing our system. We can have different, yet another modularization heuristic. We can check, or maybe let's ask you a question first, like, do you agree with this separation? Maybe you have some different ideas. What can be changed here?
So one thing from my side, what I can see is that these modules have a high potential to grow a lot, and when they start growing, probably there will be this differences from the ubiquitous language perspective, because you will have several things which will mean something completely different, and then you will need to split it. So probably one of the first things that you can do here, if you don't want to go with such big modules, is that you do this split, more modular split in the beginning. So like maybe you have this reservations in a separate module, then you have this returns in a separate module, and so on and so on.
Yeah, like it's always a matter of how deeply you want to begin with. Like from my perspective, this kind of modularization is how we can say it, maybe not straightforward, but it's easy to achieve, and you have the greatest interest, the greatest return from this investment early on. And then you can even have a smaller modules into a bigger one. So like it's not a problem to have a rentals there, and then you'll have a smaller modules, more like business focus. Like there will be reservation, then there will be rentals, and then some returns. But because of the fact that they want to answer these three processes, they want to answer to the similar question, like how many bikes are there to rent, what kind of reservation rentals does the client have, we'll be able to separate. We want to have them in the single like the module.
So then this rentals, in this case, this rentals would be more like a bounded context, and all these three that were mentioned by me will be subdomains that belong to this bounded.
Yes, the subdomains, some smaller parts of it. Yeah, and we'll move to it to the on the right part of this presentation.
Thanks.
But great insights, Maciej. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I also like to watch on the how the data is being used. Like, for example, because as you show, event can be on both sides of the equation. So it can be a result of the command processing, but can be also a trigger for example, read model update. And quite often those needs, like the use patterns, like if we see that this event is always used just to, for example, trigger read model update, and like there is no follow-up,
there's no additional business
policy
process.
Yeah, then that's also sometimes heuristic to look like maybe this can be like a so-called, for me, reporting module. Like we are just listening for the data and just building something out of it. I mean, it might be the same module, but not always. At least that's my heuristic.
Okay. Another heuristic that can be used here is about the linguistic differences, about the how you perceive the same name in the different business in the different modules that we currently come up with, and like in this business area that we have here, like the main word that can be used like differently in the different modules is, of course, what can be that? We have bike rentals. It's of course bike. Yeah. So what kind of understanding of the word bike can be in the different modules there? And this is the interesting way of finding a better ways of dividing your solution, to check whether you are able to find out to find the best definition for a single word, or maybe you'll be able to change that very usual, very common word of like bike into something more adjusted to the need of the single module. And in our situation, like it won't affect our modules, but it will strengthen our idea of like dividing these modules into these three ones. So so when we think about the differences, we could think that the bike in this third scenario becomes the bike availability. So we will focus on the bike, about the physical parts of the bike, like where it's staying, or whether it's like being driven by some other person. So we'll focus in this area about the location of the bike, about the owner of the bike, and then we have the behaviors of like changing location of the bike or making somebody an owner of this bike. So this is our understanding of the bike in this area, in this module. But in the fees module, we'll not focus on the physicality of the bike. We'll focus more on about the cost of the bike, about renting this particular bike or the reservations cancel of this particular bike. So we could come up with the definition of something like bike cost factor, that it's strictly connected to the row in the spreadsheet or some kind of like accountant that allocates, allows to allocate the cost of renting or reservation of the particular bike. So in this context, we won't think about the bike as a location, as somebody like this that is the current owner of it, but we'll think about the cost of this, of renting this bike, or about the type of this bike that it's rented, and we can change this cost. So it's like both. We have some kind of, we have some behaviors and attributes of this definition. And what is really interesting thing is that in module of charges, we don't even need to know what the bike is. Like it doesn't matter for us whether like we have this bike or we pay for something else. Like we have a charge, we have a fee, and we want to pay for that fee. And then like information about the bike is not even important for us per se. And because of that, it will strengthen our understanding of different modules, and we'll be able to check whether our modules are right or we need to change this separation somehow. Is it okay? Is it clear to you guys?
Yeah, do you have some heuristics how to come up with, like, you know, some exercise how to distinguish this language differences?
Like there is this thing, wait for that, like it's probably there. There is this technique that was described by Jerry Weinberg of being, behaving, becoming. That you can think about the single definition from the three different angles, about what's the structure of it, so like the physical aspect, this visible aspect, what's like how it behaves, what kind of changes can we have there, and about becoming this definition, transforming into something different. And this is the very good way of finding out whether your definition is right, and not focusing only on the visible part, but also about the behaviors. And it allows you to be more strict, more cohesive about the definitions.
Yeah, if I may interrupt you there. So I like the sample, and I don't know when I heard that first time, but you know, there's a simple exercise. Given a dog and a cat, try to describe that animal with only using physical things like number of legs, tail, and so on, and try to differentiate those two animals by their behaviors. And you can see how easy it is to differentiate them by the behaviors. You know?
Yeah, no,
Like,
yeah, because like from the physical angle, like cat and dog is like pretty similar, like besides the size, but from the behavior perspective, is a very different thing, and that's the good way of finding out whether our definitions are right in the single module.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. Okay, and then we can, when we have this basic understanding, basic idea of modularization, we check it from the language perspective, we changed it from the, we checked it from the source of truth perspective about the transactional perspective. We can have another heuristic that we can think about the reuse. So you can think what kind of modules, what kind of like processes can be reused there to be able to improve our adaptability to some other problems, to some other situations. To be and answering these questions will lead us to the situation where we would like to change the communication between these modules into something more as a client supplier. Yes, to change the communication from the partnership when we inform somebody about some event into something more as a customer supplier where we order somebody to do something. And as what kind of capability can be reused here as you think about this business domain? What's the first thing that is usually like reusable, but you get it from the different SaaS, different external provider?
Users.
Yeah,
Payments.
yeah, but in our situation about the rental fees, charges,
Payments.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
like the payment is usually like the first part that can be can be reused. It's not always such a easy question to be answered with, but it's always worth like answering this kind of asking this kind of question. So let me show you how you can change your like way of communicating inside of the system to make the modules more the module more reusable. So we would, when we think about the communication, to be able to make it more reuse, we need to change the way they communicate between each other. Because when we have different events there, like fee cancellation was applied, rental fee applied, etc., we want to make it more reusable. Like maybe a different thing, maybe different thought first. If you would like to introduce different module there, we would also need to add additional event to that. And because of that, because of the situation that to communicate with this charges, to pay for something, we would need to change not only our new module, our new part of the system, but also charges, because also charges would need to react to this event. So would need to create a new policy, a new reaction, and to make a charges. So to be able to reuse some part of the system, we need to change the communication between them to more customer supplier, that the fees in our scenario will tell charges what to do. Charge the client. Why? You don't need to understand why, you just need to do it. Because of that, because of this situation, you have a very reusable, very understandable contract between different parties. That one is just doing what they want, what they are being told to do, and you have the responses that are going back to our first module. And based on that, we'll be able later on, for example, to combine even more and more modules into our process. That, for example, repairs will send the comment charge client to the charges, and client charges will be returned to the particular module. And because of that, we'll be able to add another and yet another module there. And there will be still, and our charges still will be able to reuse, to be used by different parts of the system. So based on that, based on this iteration, we changed our communication, and we also change the responsibilities. So in that scenario, probably charges shouldn't be able to think about the debts, because like they don't understand what the debt is. They just want to charge, and that's all. Yeah, and like and only pay for something, like apply the payments for something. So somebody else needs to manage this debt, and this capability would need to transfer to some other module. And this kind of like discussion is not like as simple as I just showed you. Like it needs some deeper calculation, deeper understanding, whether we want to move this, whether we want to move this capability, whether we are able to, whether we don't break something in our system. Like it's, but for the sake of this presentation, this workshop, it's just simple as that. Yeah? So we have modules that communicate differently, both by events and comments between each other, and manages the single part of the bigger business area inside of the system. Yeah, it's already 1 hour gone. How quickly has it went? That's gone. Sorry for that. Okay, like, do you have any questions about this reusability?
I have one question. Do you think that such inversion of control, let's say like that, is always fine, or is it more for like a generic domain? Like, for example, my guess is that for core domain, we wouldn't probably want to have, or not always maybe, have this direct command and control style of communication. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that is the different layer, what like the matrix, because you could, I would say that like from the business differentiator perspective, we would have we could have a core domain that it's like the very important from us. We gain a lot of money based on that, but in this scenario, it could be very reusable inside our system. So for example, it could be a very difficult process management like tool, like area that you can schedule different things. You can reorder some part of the process, and then you use this part to get some information from the different parts. So you can like schedule something, and it will schedule it. So from me, it's a different way of seeing this. I wouldn't say that it's so easy that okay, if it's core, that it shouldn't accept comments. Like it's not that simple, and it's not that single answer.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't want to suggest that this is like a general rule, but I was more curious whether you are also considering that in this like those equations and this process thinking.
Like I would think about it from mostly the linguistic perspective. About the linguistic perspective, so we don't want to have the passive aggressive events that we inform you about something, but we force you to react in the particular way. So like the passive aggressive events. So it's much better to just say to somebody else, do something, because I insist on that.
Yep. I totally agree. I like the term passive aggressive. I will probably reuse it later. Thanks.
Okay, so let's go back to our part and about the bounded context, because based on that we have the modules, but then we can think about the bounded context. So so like another like the deeper step into like the modularity, because like the modules is a very common, it's a very overused word, and like the bounded context is a term that can be used to discuss both business and technical separation in our system when we have a transactional options to fulfill some informations, and it covers particular part of our business. To discuss business bounded context, it's very you can do it very easily using this bounded context canvas that I'm just showing you. It's available on the link below. It was created, I think, by Nick Tune, that's like creating this bounded context canvas to be able to show the single bounded context on a canvas, and it's a very good way of thinking about the bounded context. So it's not only about some technical separation, but also about the purpose, about some strategic classifications. So what's the domains there? What's the evolution step? What are the domain terms inside of the bounded context? So it's a very good way to start the discussion in our team about whether and how the single module transforms into a bounded context. And to even simplify it during some introduction to newcomers, I show it even simpler. At the first step, I show it only as some internal and inbound, outbound parts that's inside of the, for example, fees bounded context. We have different definitions like bike factor, client fee, debtor, and different processes, policies there, like applying fees based on events from rental, managing debts of clients based on fee and charges. So how we react to the question from outside world. And we have inbound communications on what we react to. So there are events of reservation counts systematically, bike return to the station, and outbound communication. So who we are contacting to, who are we forcing to do something, and we inform about the changes that we have. So mark client as a debtor, charge a client. This is the communication that is going outside. And usually this kind of visualization is an end of the first part of the work that I conduct with the teams, with the clients about the separation, because it's a good start to a much deeper, much lower level discussions about the communication, about the boundaries. But at that level, we should be able to distinguish the particular bounded context with the internal information, with the data, with the processes, and inbound and outbound communication between these modules. So like thinking about the bounded context is very important in terms of separation, but it's really hard to come up with them if you haven't went through these different modularization heuristics before, because then you won't be able to come up with the proper boundaries without going into details on a even storming process level. Okay, so do you have any questions regarding it? I have another like part of something. I don't know, like whether I'm not overrunning this meeting. What do you think, Oscar?
Keeping in mind that I always promise to have 1 hour and do almost 2, then
okay.
Yeah,
so I'll be able to have another 10 minutes. Okay, like great.
Yeah. No worries. This time I even told that it will be longer. I'm not great at estimation, but
okay.
so
maybe like the open question to you: have you ever used bounded context in the discussions, in the event, after event starting, or during event starting? Have you have any problems like during modularizations with this technique?
I use bounded context as a term, but I try to avoid the name bounded context, just to not frighten other people with a new term. But I just want to ask one maybe silly question, naive question, because you started with the process level event storming, and you end up with some with bounded context. I just want to ask, did you intentionally omit the big picture event storming, or?
Yes, I intentionally omitted it in this case. Usually I start with events on big picture to get a proper names, to proper events, to proper look into the process. So yes, so it's much easier at start to go through it on a big picture level and do not think about this modularization, etc. So just to understand the business process. So what happens next? What happens next? Yeah. So and it's the very good introduction. It's the very good material for the next parts, because if you understand that, okay, we want to there is this thing like the availability list, or we want to charge a client, there is something like the debtor there, and then you can very easily step into the event storming process level by understanding the vocabulary, the processes there.
Good, thank you.
So you're using usually the big picture as an input, like
yes,
partially organized, right?
Yes, yes, because like even storming picture is not so organized and not and you don't have enough information to make a proper decisions about modularization or the communication between modules. But it's much easier, it's much faster to do it that way with even storming pictures. So I usually like I just storm some business area with the business, and then with the team we go on an event storming process level with more technical people, and we are able to use more technical term there. So, like referring to what you, Rafał, said about the bounded context, usually I try to omit that word in the with the people who are not so tech savvy, not to frighten them, but with the proper team, I introduce this term very deliberately to force some kind of level, some kind of way of thinking that, okay, we need to think about this inbound, outbound communication, what's inside, what kind of business decision we have there. So it's a very deliberate step of introducing this in that bounded context idea pattern. Okay, to end it up, I want to add another another part of advice or pattern that can be used to avoid the typical problem that we would have with the modularization, because so we have two different kind of problems that can force us into deeper coupling between parts of the system between modules. So first is that the thing that is coupling our system is the business logic. That we need some data from different modules to handle some business logic, that I get proper aggregate from database or like to validate the request. And the example is below, that when we make a reservation, we want to check whether client is not marked as a debtor, because the client shouldn't be as a debtor in that space to be able to carry out with the reservation. And it usually be done with the direct connection to the database and checking data from the different modules. So it will and this kind of situation very easily we end up with the bounded context in I don't know, in the on the database diagrams, but everything coupled in the actual system. Another problem could be connected with the front-end data or front-end per se, that we need to show data from different modules to show it. We need data from different modules to show it to our customers, to calculate responses or show it on a UI. So for example, we have a rental that you are renting a bike electric and it costs $1 per minute. And we don't have this information in the rental, so we will also connect it to the database structures, to database modules, tables from fees. And we will once again break the modularity by very direct connection to the data, to the logic from the different module. So how to handle it? The first part is that we can use to solve the problem connected with the business logic is that we can ask ourselves the question, which data is needed, but some kind of latency is not a problem, like a second latency, 1 second of the latency, 1 minute of the latency. And in this kind of scenario, usually with this kind of business logic, some kind of latency is not a problem. Like nobody will be nobody could like expect, or we can discuss with the client that 1 second of the latency is okay, whether like client is marked as debtor or not. And for that cases, we can create read models using event, async queries, data batches, CDC, like different types of solutions to create a particular read model in our module that will use this data to be able to fulfill business needs, to carry out the business validation. And for example, we can do something like that with the checking whether client is marked as debtor. Like the owner of this data is a fee, but fee will inform rentals about even that client is marked as a debtor, and it can be recreated as a read model in rentals. And because of that, we won't need to contact fees module to carry out the validation about whether client is marked as a debtor or not. We'll have this information inside the rentals module. And another way of and like by asking another question, we can solve the problems on a UI, on a front end part. Because like when we see that some data is only needed for views, for calculations, we can have different kinds of approaches here. We can also create some kind of read models, but we can bind the data on the front end. We can use API gateways, or we can create a composite UI. And let me go through it very, very shortly. With the read models, also we can enrich some existing data. So for example, we'll get information that the rental fee was paid, and we will have information our rental that is paid is true. So we'll have information to show it on a front end that particular rental is paid. Of course, it could be additional read model, or like to handle it differently in the database. It's the important part is that it can be part of the read model. Different part is that we can use a gateway as a service composition. So we will connect to some API gateway and we will connect to two different parts from the system. So queries from the rental data, and then querying the billing service, like the field service and the rental services as well. Another thing is that we can bind data on the front. So for example, some data will have some parts that will connect to two different services, service 1 and service 2. And additional part is that we can use Amazon-like composite UI when we have different parts of the system get from the different services. So like it's a very brief going. It's a very brief going through this part, because like we are currently running out of time. But what I want to highlight there is that we have different ways of handling different parts of different parts of logic in our system. When we want to have the single point of truth, when you want to have this transactional, when you have this transactional options of handling some business transactions, we want to stick with the same module, with the same bounded context. But if we have some business logic, or we have some UI needs, we can approach it differently, and we don't need to couple the modules so much. We are able to have this separation on the bounded context level, not to get the data instantly from each other from the database and to break this modularity completely to zero. Do you have any questions related to these approaches? Have you ever used one of those?
I was hit by these view issues the hard way. And yeah, I mean, I totally agree, but unfortunately, that's quite often, at least it was for me quite often the part that was making it harder and harder, especially those cross modules dashboard with full text search and all those weird capabilities and paging. But yeah, it's always
like I think that in these situations you need to create this capability inside the single module. So like the handling this kind of problem is the thing that needs to be solved in its own way inside of some module. So whether we create different module for that and have this possibility in an existing module, but it's so complicated that it's so but also so needed from the business perspective that it's worth to focus it on its own somewhere, not to do it on a not to do it like after hours, that okay, like we'll add another another query, another index, like, and so like another request. Like we at some point we need to say to ourselves that okay, like it's enough, it's very complicated, it seems like it seems that it's very like it seems that it's very complicated, and it needs another like workshop to discuss what we should do about it.
Yeah, but I agree, this is really essential part, because we might design a great broken modules, like broken down, not broken, but then realize that we have some hidden coupling because of the UI. So it's good that you highlighted that.
Yes, and like thinking about the UIs, it's another part of the modularity process, that after thinking about the single point of truth, the transactional part, the linguistic part, we should also think about the UIs, but not in a way that will couple everything together. But then when we understand what kind of modules do we want to have, we can think about the ways of approaching the UI problems in a manner that will not break our boundaries.
Yep.
Okay, so a quick summary at the end. So modularization by process is the easiest way, but very easily it can lead us astray. And as I showed you, as you have seen here, we had different processes, but we split the system completely different. And this kind of, and by using different modularization heuristics, we can divide larger system into some smaller parts where they will be very cohesive, and the communication between different parts will be limited to minimum. And think of the situation when you can avoid using a different bounded context in a coupling way. So these approaches that I showed very shortly at the end will help you avoid the coupling because of the option when you don't connect to each other to each other's databases. When you carry out the business logic or some kind of front-end calculation, front-end data views, you are still able to have this separation on a bounded context level. And that's all from myself, folks, for today. Thank you very much. And if you have any question, I can answer to them right now.
Thanks, Radek, for great presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, same here. I really, especially this asking questions and marking events with them is really something that I definitely will include in my toolbox.
Yeah, like it's a very easy technique that you can use to make a big changes in your thinking, and it's a easy win for me.
Yep, I agree. I have one question, maybe dummy one.
There's no dummy question.
When do you start to think about business rules, like those decisions after commands? So do you consider them also in this process or leave it for some another sessions?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Usually I do it in the meantime. So probably I do it just after these reactions. Maybe after, maybe before the modularization. Like I would say that like there is no easy answer to that when to use it, because like modularization will show you, will answer you whether your these decisions, these rules are good or not, or but it's really hard to understand whether you break some modules by introducing these rules if you don't have any modules.
Yep.
Yes. So like. So you need to do these two things at some point. So you need to have modules and then to think about the rules, and then you need to combine it all together. And okay, is it stick together? Do we have some constraints, some business rules broken? So usually I do both at some point. So I can do it right now. Like okay, like they have this apply fee, and I add this. And I add this like the business rule here, and I write something inside there, and we discuss, we brainstorm different kinds of rules that we use between these two between these two cards.
Yeah, makes sense, because my guess is that for the modularization, those business rules like might not be the foundational for finding them, but for sure some business rules might break also this modularity. So yeah,
so I think that you need to do both just, and at some point I think that it depends on the flow of the discussion. Sometimes you focus first on the modules, so you get into modules. Sometimes you first focus on the business rules, so you focus on the business rules, and then go into the modularity.
Makes sense.
Okay, so I have another question. So at first, Radek, it was a great presentation, and my question is, have you compared your approach with some tool, for example, like context maps? Because in the past I used a lot of context maps to just see the interactions between the modules, between the context, and to visualize them, and to see the places where I can just generalize some modules to revert this communication?
I think that the context map can be used at some point there. I just haven't like used it during the talk because it would be and yet another like way of thinking about it. Mostly from my perspective, I use context mapping after defining bounded context as a tool to show the communication between different bounded contexts. So like it's from my perspective, it's the tool that I use after, not before defining modules. But if you do it differently, like it's completely okay.
I can second that. When I thought about the reuse part, then I also had the context maps in mind that they could be helpful here.
Yeah. It's. I think that it's also like usable in that way that you are saying. Like I haven't used it in that way, so I mostly like use it after the discussion of how the single bounded context looks like. Yeah, but maybe put some information about it here. Maybe you have yeah. If we discuss it, maybe somebody will find it helpful to get some links about the context maps. Okay. And error, my God. Okay, but never mind. Let's have at least the link here. Okay. Okay. So thanks for that. I'm very thankful, Oscar, for having me there, and I hope that I will meet each other on this webinar at some point of time.
Yeah, thanks, Radek. That was really great session. I think that even though I was watching that carefully, then I will need to rewatch it. And yeah, lots of really nice heuristics to apply. Thanks you.
Thank you as well. If you have any question, you can contact me by social media that I put there at the beginning of the presentation. If you have any question regarding to event storming, to the domain-driven design, I'm more than helpful to answer them.
Thanks. Okay, so thank you a lot, Radek. And I will publish the recording probably tomorrow or the next day. So if you are watching that from the recording, then also please send Radek feedback. And
yeah, I will be more than happy to get some feedback from you, or maybe some interesting cases about that. So I thought about the different types of fees, about the discounts. Maybe I will be able to make this domain even more difficult at some point.
Cool. Okay, so thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of the day or the evening. Bye.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, same for you. Bye.
Bye.